Yante, hello everyone. Welcome to another installment of Let's Talk Navajo. Today we have a very special guest, Native American entertainer and comedy legend, James Junes.
Hey, out there, all the way out there. Ian, you're awesome, man. Thank you. James Junes coming to you all the way from the edge of the res, Farmington, New Mexico. Red Water Clan, not Red Chevy running into the Canyon Clan, but Red Water Clan. Born for the Bear people. Tutnesani Tangle Clan, that is my maternal grandparents, and my paternal grandparents are Water Edge Clan, and I'm also part Hopi, so I have to introduce my whole DNA, not my DNA, but my DNA on my Hopi side is with the Roadrunner Clan.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, James, for being here. It's super exciting. I know you're somebody who has influenced my career a lot. Now, you have had, I really appreciate, the messages that you share and that you tie in with, all of the work that you do. You have had this long career, and, I've always wondered, I think I've heard it several times, but what got you into comedy? What made you want to, take that route? And I think you began with Ernie, I believe. At least that's what I remember. I don't know if you had started comedy before then, but how did you get into it?
Yeah, so how I really got into it. So I'm going to go back to the story of my friends growing up, in high school. I was always the class clown. I was always the one that was, if somebody dared me to moon somebody, I would moon somebody. That's the kind of guy when I was in high school. If you dared me to take my shirt off in the middle of a parade, I would do it. And everybody, my classmates would always say, you're funny, you should do something with it. And I was like, when you feel like something is so far off, like if I were to tell Ian, one day you're going to be this talented individual that's going to be a driving force. Right now, at this moment, you're probably like, nah, because you're trying to make it. You're trying to find yourself. Right. So when people tell you that when you're young, I was like 15, 16 years old, people would come up to me and say, hey, man, hey, bro, hey, James, man, you got something good, man. You need to do something with that. Nah, that's for those guys. There was no support system in my life. I mean, you really have to just kind of go back to my personal journey when I was growing up in domestic violence, and my mom was the one that practically raised all of us. I had three sisters, so I had this two personality. Go home, I hid myself, my comedic side. So, but when I went to school, oh man, it was amplified. I was cracking out jokes. I was doing practical jokes. So that was the stem of it. So as I got older, graduating from high school, it was not on my 1 billion things to do after high school was not stand-up comedy. You can't, take that for what it is, but that's the truth. That's a far-fetched dream in the 80s for a Native American. But my wife brings this newspaper clipping to me that says, looking for Navajo stand-up comedians. Call this number. It's in the Navajo Times. I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. It's black and white. There, Navajo stand-up comedy contest. And I looked at it and I just kind of thought back about all of those people who said you should do something with it. Mm-hmm. I have no idea how to put together a bit, or even much less to even do 5 minutes of comedy is a long time. People don't realize it, but when you get contracted now for an hour, your mind is trained to do it. You train yourself with the talent. But I'll get into that here in a bit. But I grabbed that paper and she showed it to me, and I was like, man, that's a far-fetched dream. Those things don't happen. Crumbled up the Navajo Times and I threw it in the trash can. And we kind of had a little argument. And I got to find a job to sustain my family. I have a newborn baby, and I'm just got married. A couple of days later, I got that paper back out, and I called that number, and they said, "Come on down, fill out the application, fill it out." There was 22 contestants. I asked, I said, "How many contestants are there?" Is it 22? The night of the show, there was only 4. So I met this guy backstage. He was pacing around. He was jibber jabbering. What now I figured out was tongue twisters. Was he was saying these theatrical exercises to untie his tongue. I just, "Hey man, my name's James Junes. What's your name?" And he says, "My name is Concho Roman." That's kind of an unusual name for Navajo. And we went on. 4 of us went on. I was the last one to go on, and I ended up winning the contest. So I went backstage and said, "Hey, bro, good job, man. You knocked it out." Say, "Hey, Concho, that's good, man. Hopefully we get to go on this tour that they promised us." Still no tour that was promised to us. And he says, "Hey, man, I got something to confess." He says, my name is not Concho Roman. My real name is Ernest David Sosi III. So I was competing against Ernie that very first time, and we did a whole solo career for a whole year before we became a comedy duo. And as I journeyed in the whole year of being solo, I met Ernie here and there in my solo career. Tuba City, Stars in the Desert is what brought us together. And we were contracted solo. So he had to go on before me, or I had to go on before I remember how that went. But the lady says, "We are running on Indian time. Can you guys go on together?" So let me pause right there just for a moment. If you look at it from the spiritual aspect, you can see how the setup is coming. Mm. You can see how your prayers of all of this is about to unfold. So we're like, okay, let's do it. I don't know how this is gonna happen. We were all over the place in the beginning, but the crowd was getting it. The crowd was receiving us, and we're like, okay, this is something. So we spent, after the show had got done, we went back to the hotel and we talked into the morning about becoming a comedy duo. Let me call back everybody that I'm contracted with solo right now, and I'm going to tell them that we're a comedy duo from here. So we became a comedy duo from 2002. From that full show of 2002 is our official start of James and Ernie. But our solo career has always been, and the rest started to grow. Now, mind you, this was all done without social media. The only social media platform that was available at that time was MySpace. So DVDs, we used to burn them in our VCRs. We used to make VCR tapes. We used to print the cartoon label into a printer, and we used to fold them up with glue sticks, fold them, and we used to sell those VHS tapes home burned. Talk about a Cliff 'em All, Metallica type set. Those videos probably still exist out there somewhere. Right now, somebody probably has a VCR that has that artwork that's on it. And we used to sell those at $5 a pop. We're like, hey, man, this is who we are. This is who we are. It was just word of mouth, and then people would see it. 2003 came. My wife calls up this guy to record a DVD, a legitimate video for us. Justin Hunt calls him up. We did a show at Civic Center. We recorded that set. That became James Unified 04. that set the world on fire.
Wow.
Talk about talk about something that was done just pure blood, sweat, and tears. Was
Mm-hmm.
that very moment over? And we used to play that video like an ASU powwow. We used to play that video at gathering. As soon as the video was over, people lined up to buy that video. Buy that video. We have a box of 1,000 DVDs, and we would sell 2 boxes in one sitting. In one sitting at ASU powwow and at gathering, people would buy. People would buy. This thing is growing. This thing is growing. Now we're being contracted on a national level. We're traveling to like the Flambeau, Wisconsin. We're traveling to White Earth, Minnesota. Gosh, people are getting wind of this DVD. People are borrowing DVDs, but they're never receiving them back. We're hearing all these stories, and all these kids that were small at that time have now all grown up. And to hear the stories of, hey, my mom used to put that DVD, and then she used to go to the store, and by the time it was over, she would come back. To just see that dream unfold in front of you is a feeling like no other. With that one decision to get sober in 1996, to go through the pains of 9/11, to go through having nothing. I
Hmm.
grew up with, I just herding sheep and speaking Navajo was the only tools that I had.
Right.
But to see it today, that video, I think I only have one left. We don't make that video because there's so many things that are streamed about our comedy, and not one of them, if you see look on YouTube, not one of those videos have we ever put on. All of that's been fan based.
Yeah. That is a very amazing visualization of your journey, and it's just, growing up, because in 2002, 2004, I was only 2 or 4 years old, but the moment that I can remember, my interest in like understanding like the comedy field, the entertainment business, it was like you guys were at the forefront of everything. So you guys, I grew up watching you. I had some of those DVDs, I had some of those 49 Laughs comedy DVDs. So it's just, it's crazy to see how far you've come, and like the journey of it. And like a lot of people don't really see the behind the scenes of like what goes into producing these kinds of content. So it's really interesting to hear that story, and I appreciate you telling me that story. My next question is, you've traveled all over the world, and I'm going to say world because I know you've been out of the country too, so doing shows and meeting all kinds of people. So, what are some of your most like memorable interactions that you've had?
So I think the main one that I really remember is going to like the Native American Music Awards and listening to some of these people that were there. Um, Shaking hands with John Dunsmore from the Doors freaking blew my mind, and it still blows my mind today because these guys started something that was in the 60s and 70s. But to see that dude like right there, color of black curtain standing there, Ernie and I just got done with presenting something, and we made a few jokes and stuff, and he comes and he shakes our hand. He says, "Hey man, that's a great job." He says, "My name is John Dunsmore." I know who you are. You don't have to introduce. You have to introduce yourself to me. Turn around, go back to the other side of the curtain. There's Van Zant from the Bruce Springsteen E Street Band standing right there. That's just freaking chuckling away.
Crazy.
These are people that I listen to. These are people that I feel like they're in a journey that's the same as mine, but they're in that mainstream part of the entertainment. But just for a second, just for that moment in time, and this happened probably 3 years after we became a comedy duo, I felt like there was weightlessness. I felt like there was that these guys had accepted us as one. Not like, hey man, you guys are from the res, you guys are nobodies, you guys are drunks, you guys are anything. But at that moment, just for that moment, and I'll always remember that, are a part of this family.
Mm.
The one thing that I've never mentioned ever in an interview, but that's the part I'll always remember.
Wow, that it's just crazy. You know, your stories are just great. It's awesome to hear, especially, you know, as a young entertainment professional myself. You know, I can only dream of having those kinds of moments. It's just, it's crazy, and I don't know if people are gonna realize how like amazing those kind of things are. Those interactions, they're so powerful, and it's crazy that you've had those moments. And I like that you mentioned the Native American Music Awards and, you know, those kinds of people, because I think that poses the question, you know, like the importance of Native representation in these kinds of medias, in these kind of spaces. And I'm just curious, you know, what do you think? Why do you think it's so important to have Native faces in these spaces?
Because our talent is, if anything I took away from that was, our talent is just as good as anybody's out there. Our minds, what we think of, who we are, that talent is not changed because of, let's say, Tom Hanks
Mm-hmm.
or a guy that's here on the res trying to make it. Those two talents, they're one. And it's important for us to have our place in cinema where we're not misrepresented anymore, where they can call up on anybody and say, okay, we want this person to represent this in Native films and tell the story that's genuine, that there's no blurred line. It's time to quit telling the stories that are just one-sided. We got to tell this side now. This is our time, and I really feel that there's a paradigm shift in our stories and our talents.
Mm.
You can see it evident. You can see that shift, and it was because of our forefathers and that were entertainers,
Mm-hmm.
like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Will Sampson, or Charlie Hill, the grandfather of comedy, who was on Johnny Carson, who was
Mm.
of Wonder Woman. Those were the ones that broke down the barriers. And then there was more that reinforced all of those things to now when you see a Native film, you see Native actors on the the talk shows now. You see them celebrated. But how long has it taken us to get to this point?
Mm-hmm.
That's important. That's the applause that Native America needs to take in and say, okay, let's do more. Let's do more with what we have and let our light shine finally in radio, in sports, in movies, in professionalism of being a lawyer, being a doctor, being all of these things, to where people will say, I thought all natives lived on the reservation in leathers and feathers. But to point out into the NFL football field and say that, you see that player right there? That guy right there? He was drafted in the first round, and he comes from Window Rock, Arizona. You see that player over there? WNBA, right there. She played at Ganado High School.
Mm.
50, that's what I'm talking about. The next 50, it gives us that mindset to where we can do it. We can do it. Our talent is just as good as theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Our talent is just as good as Tom Hanks. That's what I like to see in the next 50.
Wow. You know, I definitely resonate with a lot of what you've said. You know, using this platform, using, you know, the momentum of what I've been able to kind of cultivate so far, it's important to, you know, keep yourself grounded and then use those platforms to amplify these kinds of voices. And, you know, that's my goal, that's my dream. And, you know, it has been an awesome experience talking with you. And, you know, like, you come up with some of the most funniest stories that I've ever heard. And I think you're one of the people that could absolutely make me belly laugh. But, like, you know, is there a favorite set? Is there a favorite set that you have that you love to tell to people that, you know, just has this awesome reaction every time?
Yeah, it's a running bit. It hasn't been on videos. I think people have recorded it and put it on YouTube. But I tell the story of how my wife and I have been married for years, but I'm setting up the punchline. I'm setting up the punchline to where there's competition between my wife and I. And I tell them that I'm so downtrodden that she left me in the dust during a half marathon. She left me in the dust, and to just kind of pound that just even further was this 16-year-old kid that just blew right past me as I was cramping and as I was hurting. And he had no shirt on, and he was running the full marathon. And I tell people, put your left thumb up like you're hitchhiking. Then on the other side, put it together, fold your hand forward. Now you should see your thumb muscles in front of you. And now rub your thumb muscles together. And I said, that's what his butt looked like when he ran right past me. And moral of the story, never be jealous of somebody who's getting it better than you are. So there's actually teachings in some of the bits that I do, but that one is always a go-to bit. I like to present that. It's a new bit that, and it constantly, the crazy thing is, I can tell you that some of the greatest bits are there, but some of the greatest bits I will never remember because they were in that time and they were in that.
Right. Wow. That is awesome. This has been such a blessing to be here with you, James. And I learned a lot myself, and, you know, I learned a lot of lessons that, you know, I'll apply to my life and, you know, my line of work and what I want to do for my people. I appreciate your time being here with us today. Is there anything else that you want to share with people? Any upcoming events, any upcoming shows, any new projects you're working on, anything you want to share with anyone?
Yeah, you know, my social media platforms, I have a Facebook. I think I still have MySpace, all under my name, James Junes. The misconception is people think that my last name is June, but it's actually Junes. And yeah, I'm writing a book right now, so it's going through everything that we've talked about, and I want to share that. I'm still writing it. I'm taking my time with it. It talks about growing up and then coming into it, and I'm going to direct it. I actually got somebody to help me film, and I'm going to direct it. So I can give away this much. So it goes along the sides of, coincides with my life and what my dad was. But yeah, on the Instagram at June70, it's a request. I feel like I just want a certain amount of people that I feel like who enforce, that we enforce each other rather than leaving it open. Like I said, I'm not in it to be famous, but if that's what they call it, then that's about what I call it, is just me being me.
Well, you've heard it here first, folks. You know, exclusive. James Junes is working on some amazing projects. I am so happy for you to be here. Thank you so much for coming once again and being here with me on Let's Talk Navajo. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, James Junes. All right.